My name is Richard Feldman. I'm chairman of SCORE Westchester. With a show of hands, who here knows what SCORE is aside from Tanika? Okay, all right. Who here knows what SCORE is? Okay. SCORE is a nationwide organization. It's comprised of roughly 300 chapters in every state across the country except Alaska and Hawaii, with approximately 11,000 volunteers. 11,000 volunteers have dedicated hours a week to help the small business group. At SCORE, we mentor and educate people who want to get into small business or people who are in small business. We help them build their dreams. That is our dedication to the small business. At SCORE Westchester, we have roughly 45 volunteers. And if you take and do the math, of 45 volunteers who are all business experts having spent their life in industry and business, we cover roughly 2,000 years of business experience. So that I can tell you that there's hardly a problem that exists today or that we can imagine coming up that somebody has not experienced before. We are here to help you. All SCORE services are free. We don't charge for the education. We have workshops roughly in Westchester, 100 workshops a year. They're all free. We have workshops every Wednesday afternoon at our office in White Plains at 120 Bloomingdale Road, plus workshops in the evening at various satellite locations such as Harrison Library, White Plains Library, Yonkers, Greenberg. Thank you, Mike. Mike is a former SCORE volunteer, SCORE mentor, now in an independent business. Mike Keating, who's your speaker tonight, he didn't come here to hear me. And I couldn't, this is too long for me to memorize. So I can tell you what I know, and I'll tell you, and I'll read the rest of it. But Mike is the founder and former owner of Keating Electric, which he started from scratch in 1988 and grew to a significant size when he sold the company in 2014. The company is still here today and profitable and viable. And if you need electricity, I'll tell you, go to Keating Electric. That's not official. Mike is a former VP of Data Communications for the Bank of New York. He's a former engineer in charge of Control Data Corp. He's a graduate of Pace Lubin School of Business. He's a certified business coach. I'm very impressed with him. He's married. His wife Noreen is here. They have 8 children, 16 grandchildren, and Mike is now an independent business coach. Mike Keating.
Thank you. So I have a couple of slides and things like that to put up on the wall when we get our electronics working here, but I can get started without that. So I've been asked to speak tonight on what makes a contracting business successful, or how would I make a contracting business successful. And I haven't been asked how to speak on how a contracting business can survive, right? Or get by, or get along. And I make that distinction because I feel that one of the biggest issues that many small businesses, contractors in particular, but many small businesses face is they face survival. So they are able to get their business up, they're able to do business, they're able to make sales, but they're not ever really able to gain a life out of that business. They don't generate sufficient profit to end up enjoying it and to provide them with the life that they're really trying to have. So I think that's one of the biggest issues facing many small businesses. They work their heads off. The owners of the businesses work their heads off. And they end up like the hamster in the wheel or on the treadmill. You're working harder and harder, you're working longer and longer, but you're not really making all that much progress. Ha! Wonder of electronics. So what I titled this talk, I got a microphone now too. So I titled this talk, What Contractors Need to Know to Be Successful. And what will we cover today? So the idea is to explore why owning or operating a business is different than having a job, and explore what some of the roles of an owner of a business are. So what is that owner's job? What is his or her responsibility? And explore how we might organize our business to operate it best for the time and profit. So we want success, not just survival. And finding this projector's light very difficult. It's right in my eyes here. So what's the difference between having or owning a business and having a job? A business is an organization, and I can't stress this more clearly or more importantly. A business is an organization. It's separate. It's a different entity from the owner. The idea of the business is the thing, the entity that will produce the results that we want. A job is something that takes place within the business. So one of the things that often happens is I'm a carpenter. I'm a damn good carpenter. I really know how to lay out work. I can get work done quickly. I can get it done accurately. People like me, and I'm able to do this work very well. So naturally, I will become a carpentry contractor, right? I become a builder or a contractor. Well, the fact that I'm a good carpenter is a very different skill and requires different skills or different talents than it does to operate a business. Operating a business is something that will have carpentry take place within it. But operating a business involves many, many, many more things than carpentry contracting. There's a wonderful book. It's called The E-Myth. Has anybody here ever read The E-Myth? The author is Michael Gerber. And his premise is that most people that start a business are what he calls a technician. So a technician being a carpenter, a painter, an electrician, a doctor. Could be, it doesn't matter the role involved, but he's a technician. And that person views the business as that job. And what Gerber talks about in the E-Myth is they view that incorrectly. You have to view the business as the entity that you're trying to build, and then have that business create and do those jobs. So that's what I'm saying up here. A job is a task or a series of tasks. So that's the carpenter, that's the painter, that's the electrician. By the way, we're a very small group here, so any questions or whatever, just put your hand up or speak out and we'll address them right at the moment. Another thing that's brought out in that book, it's not the commodity or the work itself that's important. What's important is the business. How it acts, how it looks, and how it does what it's intended to do. So we all have dealt with various businesses. You know, I was in the electrical contracting business. There were, at one point in time, 800 licensed electrical contractors in Westchester County. 800. That's a lot of businesses, right? So what sets Keating Electric or any other business apart from all the rest? Every one of them that was listed was licensed. Every one of them, if they were licensed, they had the required insurances. Every one of them had vans or offices or pieces and parts, and most likely had the ability to do the electrical work, right? So what sets them apart? It's how we do that work. It's how we interface with the customer, how we interface with the client. Why does a client call us as opposed to calling somebody else, right? It's all of those other pieces and parts of the business that set that organization apart. So as the owner, when we were talking up there before about the owner and the job, the owner's job is to build that business so that it handles all of that interaction with the client in a way that the client wants. That's another key point. What is the business's role? The business's role is to please the client, right? So I might be superb at certain types of work, but if that's not what the client wants, I will not be successful selling what it is I do. I will be successful if I sell or offer what the client wants, right? Big distinction. One of the things I mentioned in one of the slides here is knowing your market. let me get back on track here. So another role of the owner, so we're building the business. I say good luck, bad luck, fair, unfair, it doesn't matter. It's up to the owner to succeed. It's up to the owner to take the steps, to do the things that will make that business successful. This means knowing, because a system is tracking the financial performance of each and every job a contracting business does. So when I'm in the contracting business, and that's the focus of tonight's discussion, when I'm in the contracting business, I'm typically doing jobs, whatever the contracting business is. So I'm doing jobs. As a contractor, I have to know how that job is going and how that job went. So I give somebody a price or an estimate for a job. They want me to wire this room. So I come up with a price to wire this room. I tell them it's going to be $4,800. Okay. So my price has to be competitive. Right? I have to be within the ballpark of what that client wanted. But then I have to know at the end of that job, how did I do? I have to know that for a couple of reasons. One is I want to make money. That's the purpose of my business. But I also want to know for the next time I wire a room like this, what did it actually take me to do this? Right? Because if I just do this job and I don't track my costs, and I don't track my profit on it, the next time I figure one of these jobs, I've gotten no input from my experience. Right? So I want to be, I say here, it means knowing because a system is tracking the financial performance. So what do I mean by a system? It means I'm not haphazardly keeping track of costs. I have a method in place. So if I'm using QuickBooks, which is a very popular piece of software, if I'm using QuickBooks, I'm generating reports out of QuickBooks on a fixed or regular basis, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever that cycle might make the most sense for my business. And I'm looking at my performance on that particular job, that particular customer, and that particular type of work. I need to know that if I'm going to be successful. There's a great book out there. It's called Managing by the Numbers. So it takes accounting and it takes the information that we want to generate and know and analyze and puts it in layman's terms and makes it a very practical and easy to reference book. What are some of the reasons that businesses succeed or fail? Anybody want to venture a guess on that? Any ideas on that? You look like you were raising your hand. You were just going up to the camera. Anybody have any questions or thoughts on why does a business succeed or fail?
Poor management.
Sure. Poor management. Right? Poor management might be one of the biggest reasons, right? Things are going on that I don't know about. Right? Very often, if I'm a very small business, I can watch everything and do everything. I've got one or two people working for me. I know what's going on. As the business grows in size, much harder to keep track of everybody, much harder to have the instructions and the information for everybody, much harder to find out what happened because now I'm not dealing with the customer directly. It's not a contracting business, but think about a restaurant. I'm a great chef. Really not. I mean, people are jealous for me. But I'm a great chef, right? I'm great with people. People love me and they love my food. So I open up a restaurant. It's a roaring success. Everybody loves it. So what's the natural thing I do? I open up another one. I'm on a roll. Well, guess what happens? When I open up that second restaurant, I'm not there. I'm not the chef anymore. Somebody else is the chef. Somebody else is the maitre d'. Somebody else is greeting the client. Somebody else is checking to see that we're doing the things that we said we would do. Somebody else is hearing back from the client to say, hey, I didn't like this or I love that. Same thing. So we're not listening any longer, right? Same thing with the contractor. Right? If I'm sending men out or I'm sending people out to do that work, I've lost direct contact with the client. Very important that I have a system in place, I have a mechanism to to stay in touch and make sure that that client can reach you. That they don't feel that if they call, you know, there's all of the border guards who never let the call reach me. So that's some of the reasons that a company might fail, right? Poor management. What about success? What do you think the things are that would bring about or help bring about success?
Word of mouth business.
Yeah.
The good relations.
Yeah. So word of mouth, I would get good word of mouth business because I've done good work for somebody, right? They were pleased in what I did for them, right? Word of mouth could kill me if I'm doing poor work. So, any other thoughts on that? So, good management, you know, we said poor management, say good management. So, one of the things that I feel, I say the greatest chance for success is when we set out to create an organization. So, I'm building a machine here, creating an organization. When we set out to create an organization that will be a separate entity from the owner, and that will be a model designed to deliver the product or service desired and will provide the owner the life they want. So from that, a lot of that is coming out of that book, The Email. So we're saying that will be a model. So when I say it'll be a model, it means that I'm looking at the organization of this business. And I'm saying, I'm going to design this thing so that it is a model. It is something I could replicate again. The guy that opens up, the chef that opens up the restaurant, when he wants to open up a second one, he has to look at why he was successful or she was successful in this first one. To open up another one and do it again, right? McDonald's. McDonald's has, I don't know the exact number, but it's 35,000 or so restaurants, right? Now, we may or may not be fans of McDonald's food, but what do we know about McDonald's? We know that if we go into a McDonald's and order a Big Mac, a quarter pounder with cheese, and a small fries, we know exactly what we're going to get. Right? We know that. How the heck do they do that? You're talking about an operation that has, in this area, people whose language is not English, it's their second language, right? Their native language is another language. You're talking about people who are not paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. You're talking about typically people on the lower end of the pay scale. Yet McDonald's is able to produce the same product over and over and over with amazing consistency. How do they do that? They design a model. And they say, this is our model. You're not going to decide how this happens here today. You're going to operate our model. Our model says this is how we do it, and that's how you're going to do it. If you're going to work here at McDonald's, if you're going to manage a McDonald's, if you're going to buy a McDonald's, the McDonald's owner goes through Hamburger U. So they're not released onto the public until they have gotten the training to say, this is how we do it. And we only do it this way. Did they ever change? Sure, they'll change. But when they change, they'll change the model. And they'll put that in place and they'll do the same thing over and over and over. Key performance indicators, anybody heard of those? So a KPI or a key performance indicator is just that. It's a key performance indicator. If I want to measure my business, I want to know how I'm doing, how's it going, there's a certain number of things I want to keep track of. I'm not going to keep track of every last thing in my business. It'll take me too much time. I'll get, you can't see the forest for the trees. I'll get lost in the sauce. I'll lose the detail. But if I establish certain things that I track, then I can keep a good financial handle on my business. So what's an obvious thing for a business would be revenue, right? How am I doing? I have a goal to produce X number of dollars or create X number of dollars in revenue by the end of the week, the month, the quarter, the year, whatever it might be. So I have that goal. I have an indicator that I can easily find and track revenue. Expenses might be another one, right? Jobs completed might be another one. Any number of things that are going to be key to the operation of that business. And also they might be key to the operation or completion of my plan. Right, so if I have established a plan, if I'm doing $200,000 a year in sales today, and my plan is in 3 years to be doing 1.2 million, then I can calculate I have to grow at X percent per month, per year. Then I establish a key performance indicator that will be the change in revenue. What did my revenue do this month versus last month? Am I on track? Am I working towards my goal? So KPIs show the performance of activities that generate value. Choose the ones that make sense to you. And it's easy to end up with too many. If you end up with too many, they lose their value. Best to limit it to a few important ones. There's 4 items or 4 decisions that I think are important to a business owner. And we'll take these forward on the slides here. So, and I think the most important one is this very first one here. So what is your primary aim or your vision for the business? So wherever it is I want to get to, I don't stand a very good chance of getting there if I don't know where it is I want to get to, right? So if my goal is ill-defined, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to do some electrical work, and I'll most likely do some other work, and I'm going to have a couple of people, and I want to make at least 500 or something like that. So I have this very wishy-washy plan in place. The odds of success are, really slim, really small. But if I can define for myself, say, okay, I have an idea, I want this business to be this. We should be able to do $3 million a year in sales. In order to do $3 million a year in sales, I'm going to need 25 people, 95 people, whatever that is. In order for us to do that, we'll have to have a system where we're doing business for this type of a client. So I've thought this out. I can look kind of like staring off into space, and I can say, I know what this business looks like. And what I really want to know is I want to know what this business looks like when it's running the way I see it running, when it's running the way I want it to. It may not be doing that today, but I want to be able to visualize that. I want to be able to see that. Because now I have a shot at planning and getting to there. So the first step is, what's my primary aim? Next step is, what's the objective in this? So what do I want to get out of this thing? Noreen and I, Noreen is my wife who's sitting in the front seat here, we have 8 children. I was going to say we had 8 children, but we still have them. If anybody doesn't know, they last a long time. So I could not operate an electrical contracting business that gave me a nice, neat little paycheck. That would not work. Might be what I wanted to do, and there's nothing wrong with that if that suited my personal needs, but it didn't. So I had to look at Keating Electric and say, this thing that I build has to provide me X number of dollars, or it doesn't work. So when I'm doing my planning to get to that vision that I want, a piece of that vision is, what's it going to give me? What do I as the owner, or the owner's family, get from it? Very, very important. How will it be organized? How will the business be organized? So I can start a business, an electrical contracting business or any other business where it's just me, right? In fact, when I started out, it was just me. I could be a doctor, right? So I'm going to have just me. Maybe it'll be me and an office manager. But I have to know that. Again, I'm looking at that plan down the road and looking at how it looks when it's done, when it's working. I have to know, is it just me? Or this thing that I have in mind, does it require employees? Most likely does, right? And if it requires employees, how many? A lot of employees increases the potential for the business, right? The bigger this thing is, the more it can most likely deliver for the owner. But a lot of employees adds to the complexity, adds to the size, adds to the complexity, adds to the laws and the rules that apply. So it adds to the potential downsides too. But all of that is okay as long as I've said to myself, this is how it will be organized, this is what my plan is. So if I plan to have employees from day one, I'm looking at, okay, how will I lay this thing out so I have employees? Will I incorporate? Will I incorporate as a this or that, an LLC or a sub-S? I don't have those answers. I'm saying these are things that we would address. So how will it be organized? And then the fourth one would be, who will be my clients? So, again, using me as the analogy there, if I have to run or want to run a business that's going to be of a certain size and it's going to generate revenue of a certain amount, I have to look at the type of work I'm going to do. And when I look at that type of work, that's going to fall into certain categories of clients, right? If I have to bring home a big paycheck, I can't be doing little tiny jobs, all day long for people that can only pay a little bit. I have to look and say, okay, I'm going to provide a higher level of service, something that has more value, more expensive to deliver that, but I can get more value for it. And that means if I'm going to do that, I have to pick out my clients. If you look out in the parking lots around White Plains here, we'll see there's Toyota Corollas, right, plenty of them. There's Hondas, and there's Beamers, right? And there's Mercedes. All of those cars are good cars. And the people building those cars and selling those cars all make money, right? They all operate a business based on those cars. But none of them would survive if they tried to sell a Mercedes to a Toyota Corolla buyer, right? That buyer is going to say, yeah, you mind? I can get three of these for what you're trying to sell. And they're going to say, oh, I want nothing to do with you. And the same is just as true the other way around. You go to that Mercedes buyer and offer them the Toyota Corolla, nothing wrong with the Toyota Corolla. Not at all what they want. They don't want to be getting out of a Toyota Corolla. They want to be getting out of a Mercedes. Okay? So nothing wrong with either one of those vehicles, or either one of those companies. But I have to know which market my client is in. Because I will waste all of my time and I will be unsuccessful if I try to sell to the wrong client. How do I know? Yeah. Yeah.
Did you build a big enough model to cover both the Toyota and the Mercedes? Or the BMW? Or
Right. Sure. Do people have both? Sure. Now, that's a great question. So maybe I'm willing to spend the money for this particular thing over here, but I don't want to spend that kind of money on this thing over here. So people buying furniture for their second home, and they either want to keep that really nice, so they buy furniture that's really nice for that, or it's just a second home, it's just a vacation place, I don't want to spend a lot of money on it. Put this in there. Natasha, who's one of the mentors, and is the, along with Rich, the co-chair of the White Plains Group, is always talking about listening. People come in and they're also willing to tell, but people have to listen too, right? So you hit the nail on the head when you said listen. So when I'm talking to my client, I have to be listening with my eyes as well, right? To try and pick up that sense. Something I used to do when I was first in business, somebody would call me up and say they wanted a 200 amp electrical service installed, put in their house. So I'd go over to the house, and me being a really nice guy, a really smart guy, and knowing all about this stuff, I would take a look at it and I'd explain to them they didn't need a 200 amp service. You have a gas furnace, you have a gas stove. That's not what they wanted. It's exactly right. It took me a little while to learn that. So I would explain to them, you don't need that, and in fact, they were delighted. Thank you very much, Mr. Keating, I appreciate that. Go buy that house a month later, there's a new 200 amp service on it. They wanted a 200 amp service. Right? And you have to learn to listen for that. So who will be my clients? Another way of looking at that, or a term that's used, is who's my ideal client. Right? I mentioned this earlier, that a business is successful when it provides clients what they want. What they want. It's very, very key. So how will we attract that client? And I mentioned here about the BMWs and the Toyotas. How might we attract the correct client to us? Any thoughts on that?
Working model for a trade.
I didn't hear you.
Working model for a trade. How you're running the business.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the ways I might attract them is by speaking to the right crowd, right? So I wouldn't be, let's say, advertising in a magazine like Westchester Homes for the equivalent of Toyota Rolls, right? If I was in the home and services business or contracting business, I'd be advertising granite countertops in there, backyard greens. Rich has 2 or 3 backyard greens in his apartment. So I would want to be speaking, first off, I'd want to be speaking to the people that I think will make up my ideal client. And then again, as you mentioned, listening all the time. Birds of a feather flock together. So you mentioned about word of mouth. So if I'm working with the right client, the ideal client for me, I want to make certain that they know I would like them to spread the word for me. Nothing wrong with asking. It's the word testimonial. Getting a testimonial from somebody like that. Yeah, and networking would be another piece of that. But all the while I'm trying to stay within the category or group that would be ideal clients for me. Oh, I mentioned pricing strategies. Pricing is part accounting, part numbers, and part magic or part feel or touch, right, or art. If I were to offer my wife here, I could pick on her because she's my wife and she has no choice. But if I were to say, look, I got you some really good, cheap perfume, right? No deal. Would it matter the scent?
No.
It wouldn't, right? Because I don't want cheap perfume. Besides, is that what I'm worth? You bought me cheap perfume? So you don't buy cheap perfume, or at least you don't admit to buying cheap perfume. Right? Diamonds are not advertised as inexpensive. Right? So pricing is also a way of establishing, as part of the it's part of the way of establishing the value of something. Right? Starbucks came along in a $1 coffee world or a 75-cent coffee world and started selling $4 coffees. How did they do that? They established the value of that coffee. Theirs was different. It was set apart. People were happy to pay if they were getting a Starbucks. Right? So pricing is part of that strategy for selecting my ideal client as well. Because if my ideal client has to have the financial wherewithal to purchase from you, if I offer them at prices below that, they're gonna go away. And I'm also going to, if I price it correctly for that category, I will not have people from other categories chasing me either. Okay, so nuts and bolts. So I mentioned a little bit of this earlier. So some basic forms of business, and then we have about 5 minutes left. That's all. So give a little thought, if you would, to maybe some questions that I might be able to answer regarding this. But some basics about most businesses. So the form of the business: sole proprietor, partnership, corporation. Insurances, Licensing. So Westchester County, if you're going to be in the trades of any kind, if you're going to do home owner services work, you must be licensed. You must carry some type of a license. So there's a home improvement contractor's license, or home contractor's license. So if you're not a skilled, what we would call a skilled trade, like a plumber, HVAC, or an electrician, you'd have to get that license. So if you're going to do painting, carpentry, if you're going to cut the grass, you must have that license. If you don't have that license, you leave yourself open to legal issues with the county. Right? And you also leave yourself open to liability from the client. The skilled trades have their own licensing requirements. One of the advantages to being in one of the skilled trades is it's a bit of a barrier of entry to others. So if I'm in the painting contracting business, there's almost anybody and his brother. I'm not going to say they can do work or that they know what they're doing, but almost anybody and his brother or sister can go into the painting business. They take out a home improvement contractor's license with Westchester County, they buy some painting brushes, they're in business as a painter. An electrician requires 11 years of trade-related work in order to get the license, similar for a plumber and similar for HC. So you've blocked the entry, or put up a barrier to entry, which is significant. There's still a lot of people in the business, but it does help you. Payroll. New York State, I put there New York State Department of Labor and Regulations. Do not mess with payroll. Payroll, you can have a corporation that protects you from liability for many, many things. It does not protect you from unpaid payrolls. Or payroll that is determined to have been improper and now must get rectified. You personally will have to come up with that cash. You will not get away with it. Use of professionals. I highly and heartily recommend that we all involve ourselves with a CPA, a good insurance guy, and then an attorney when needed. I don't know that we need to have an attorney on staff. I'm not suggesting that, but an attorney when needed. Business systems. I mentioned earlier that you want to have a system that's accurate and easy to use to track your business costs, your business operations. Some things that are unique to contracting. So contracting has greater risks than most businesses. If I open up a candy store, sure there's the risk that somebody could trip on something and fall, they could buy a candy that somebody had altered, but the risks are very small. But when I'm doing contracting, I'm climbing on somebody's roof, I'm messing with their electrical work, I'm opening up water lines or gas lines in their home. There's real risk there. So I want to make certain that I have the proper insurances to protect me, not only to protect me, but to protect my client. In the event that something goes wrong, I want to make certain that that can be resolved. Anybody ever heard of a SWOT analysis? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So we want to be looking at our business and saying, okay, what are the strengths that I have? What makes me good at what I do? And what can I sell to the world out there? Opportunities are the other side of that, saying, okay, these are the strengths that I have. What opportunities are there out there for me to use those strengths to grow my business? And then the other two, the weaknesses and the threats. The strengths and weaknesses, the weaknesses are obviously the weaknesses. What are we not so good at? What do we not do well? What are pieces and parts that we're missing? And then threats are typically things from the outside world. So they could be competitive threats, they could be legal threats, they could be any number of threats. How would you like to be a small retailer now with Amazon on the horizon? Okay? Talk about threats. You could have had a great business that you run very well. You've been perfect for your customers. Right? You're great. People love you. And Amazon is up there. It's like what the thing from the movie, what was it, Jaws? Dun dun.
Yeah.
Dun dun. I mean, it's incredible the power that Amazon is having over the retail world. So this strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats we call a SWOT analysis. And this is really the last piece on this. Some of the things that we can do to make our businesses more successful. So I say here, how you provide your service is what sets any contractor apart from the rest of the crowd. Typically, the same products and service you offer are readily available from many, many other companies. Following are some areas that can help you set your company apart. So, I'm going to read off my list here. So the image that your company presents. You have people going to somebody's home and they dress in a nice uniform and they look presentable. That's a big advantage over somebody who doesn't do that. That same example, though, if they're working on construction sites, there's no value in that, or very little value in that, right? Because everybody is dressed the same way. I'm not talking about impressing somebody there with how the phone is answered. I'm a big believer in having a human being answer the phone. Human being, people call, they want to know that they've reached somebody and whatever it is they're trying to do will be resolved. First, quality only. Don't do cheap work. I don't care what the customer asks for. Do only first quality work. Work that you are proud to say this was the work I've done 5 years from now. Back. Track and know your costs for every job, and track and know your profit or loss on every job. If you're not doing that, you don't know what's going on. And you can't manage a business unless you know that. Pricing strategies that allow your company to provide quality service. Profit gets labeled as a dirty word at times. You know, like they're only in it for profit. If I am not profitable, how well do you think I can treat my employees? What kind of perks and benefits do you think I can give my employees? If I'm not profitable, what do you think the odds of me being around a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 4 years from now? So if I'm providing really great service and somebody wants to use me because of the service I provide, but I price myself in such a way that I can't sustain myself, I'm not going to be around. There's nothing wrong with the profit. There's words like obscene profits, and those are different situations, but there's nothing wrong with it. Training your people. And remember we talked about a model, so we're training our people how we do it. Somebody said to me one time, or I read someplace one time, well, what if you train your people, you put all of this money in them, and they leave? Right? It's a valid question and a concern, right? Because you're putting time and energy in it. But the reply to that was, what if you don't train them and they stay? Now you have a bunch of untrained knuckleheads. They may not be knuckleheads, I know. Okay, are there any questions? Is anybody awake? Yeah. Yes.
What do people in the room do? What do you all do?
Can you tell us?
Mr. Keating, we're in the electrical contracting business.
Are you?
That's true.
Okay.
I used to do the trading, now I stopped, so we do that long enough.
Yeah.
That's what we were laughing
That's
at.
what I'm laughing.
Okay. So electrical contractors.
We own and manage properties, property management.
Property management?
Yeah.
Okay. And you, good lady?
Like what you taught, oh Lord, I teach, but I'm starting up
Okay.
a startup.
A startup. Okay. And you, young lady?
I'm retired.
You're tired.
But what you taught can be done in any business.
Yes.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Environment.
Yes.
Is transfer hybrid,
Yeah, I believe that.
yeah,
I believe there's certain rules about virtually any business.
organization,
Yep.
must.
The, Michael Gerber talks about systems. That's his whole thing is about systems. And what he says is the systems run the business or the company, and the people run the systems. So you look at each and everything. How are we going to do this? Including how we answer the phone. You know, how we respond to whatever, how we dispatch, whatever it is. How are we going to do that? We think about it, we think it through, we come up with a way that we want to do it that makes the most sense, and then we only do it that way. That's what we do each and every time. And everybody that comes in, we teach them, this is what we do here, this is how we do it. And I thank you very much for your great ideas, but this is how we do it here. Okay.
All right, thank
Well,
you.
thank you all